Hi, everybody. Well, a couple of people are missing, but thank you all for coming. I'm Dinette, and this is Sarah.
Hi, nice to meet you all. Is my
She's
mic working?
she's a lifelong journalist, equestrian journalist. Oh, you want to turn this off?
No,
No,
it's me.
it's. Oh, maybe I'll ask.
Hello, hello. Okay,
If
thank you.
yeah. Okay, but you are a lifelong equestrian journalist. You've worked for a lot of big magazines in
Yes,
England and also here. You run your own company, Paper Horse Media,
yes.
and we work together a little bit for Horse Grooms as well. And you came up with the idea to do a media training after seeing a couple meetups last year, and I think it's a great idea because grooms get in the spotlights more and more and more. Luckily, that's a good thing. But then it's also nice that you know what you can say, cannot say, or your rights basically. And so
Yeah.
go for it.
Okay,
Thank
cool.
you.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for coming out on a frigid night. So as Danette mentioned, I'm just going to give you a very brief history of my background. So I grew up in England, pony club. My mum was a racehorse trainer. We played polo. We did pretty much everything. I evented a lot and things. So I had a lot of horse history, and then I fell into journalism by accident, and started writing about polo for the national newspapers in England. And it kind of mushroomed from there. And I've done sports reporting for 2 years on a sports desk. Is that echoing?
No, I think yeah, maybe a
Okay.
little. Yeah.
And then in '96, I came over to work for Sidelines, which back in those days was a paper. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember that, but it covered polo, the horse show, and dressage, and I was the polo editor. And then I met somebody 2 weeks later who was an American polo player, got married, and that was that. So been here kind of on and off ever since. I just came back down to Wellington a few years ago and launched Paper Horse. The concept behind it is it's not covering anything, but it's doing stories behind the scenes and just interesting stuff on polo dressage and show jumping. Because as we all know these days, there's a lot of regurgitated articles out there. There's very little pure content that's actually generated or curated originally. It's all sort of mismatched, and you don't know what you're reading, frankly. So my objective was to make it everything I write myself. I do all my own interviews. I tend not to use press releases and do my own photos. So this kind of ties in with this a little bit. The reason we're here is, and I should also say I've worked on PR and communications, so I have been on the interviewee side of the fence, and I know which one I prefer, if I'm honest. But there's nothing to be afraid of. It's all good, right? So the reason we're here is because of Danette, I think, because grooms are getting more and more recognition for what they do, and about time too, frankly. And somebody described it to me like 20 years ago. There'd be this muddy little person running around in the background, but now it's a little more, upfront, and you're in the forefront of the sport and representing the sport, which is great. And it gives you a massive opportunity to put the sport in the best light possible. Having said that, there are some things to consider. So um, you guys have a lot of knowledge. Now, whether you want to share it or not is a different story, but you have to be sort of slightly edited in what you say when you talk to the press, and we're going to get into that at this point. The first thing I wanted to say before we even talk about interviewing is your presentation. So, if you happen to be especially going up to a Saturday night's class and there's a good chance your horse is going to win, you don't want to be in the arena getting your $500 check in your cut-off shorts, right? I mean, I'm just saying, like, if your employer gives you branded clothing and logos, wear it with pride, represent your company, because photographs especially never go away. And once that photograph is taken of you with your $500 check, it's going to be broadcast. Plus, you are also on the live stream, so it's worth remembering what you look like. And I see a lot of grooms now wearing more of the hats, I think, but I also feel like you could talk to your employer about it and say, is there anything you want me to wear? We're going to be possibly in the public eye tonight. I think it's worth having that conversation. So, right, let's go here. So, who are the media? now in 2026? That's a big loaded question because back in the day we were talking about print and TV, radio, maybe, but now we're talking about a wide open internet. I'm not really here to address social media per se, but to be honest, even though the media circuit is wider, the fundamentals have stayed the same. And how you represent yourself, how you put yourself across on the internet or in public in general, and how you put yourself across were you to be interviewed. So I would like to ask just briefly, has anyone here, I'm sure you've all had access to interviews at some point, but has anyone been interviewed recently or had experience being interviewed by the press at all? Yes? Okay, good. So, I mean, but it's obviously not that common, but trust me, it's going to become more common because people are starting to realize that grooms have a lot more. I mean, for me, you guys are the best source of information. I'm just saying. Like, if I can get a groom to sort of chat, I'm not trying to do anything illicit here, but if I can get a groom to talk to me, I learn 20 more things about that horse than I will ever learn from talking to anyone else. So that's the beautiful part about it. So, my first piece of advice to anyone is if somebody approaches you for an interview, find out who you are talking to. Okay, that is important because finding out who they are and who they work for will allow you to gauge what the interview is going to be about. I mean, obviously, at the horse show, 99.9% of the time they're equestrian journalists, but also if you know which publication they're working for, Chronicle of the Horse, for example, we know it's going to be a national story of interest. Um, Equus, more about, I think it's Equus or the veterinary practical horseman, sorry, that might be more about lameness or, more technical things. So it's quite important that you figure out who you're talking to before you talk to them. So then you'll have an idea of what they're going to be looking for from you. And you try to be a little bit like one step ahead of the game there. So especially, this is going off tangent a slightly, but generally speaking, at the horse show, you're in what we would call a safe press environment. I mean, when none of us are here to, cause any waves in the industry. What will happen though is if anybody ever gets a chance to go to the Olympics, for example, Los Angeles is coming up, that's a whole different ball game because then you have the world's press and you have non-equestrian journalists and you have to be very careful of that. And the reason I bring that up especially is because there's a specific Grand Prix rider whose name I won't mention, who is very nice and he talks to me all the time, but he was very nervous about being interviewed because he has gone to an Olympics, I think some time ago, and he'd been misquoted quite badly in the national press. Now, that doesn't happen very often, but it happened to him and it's put him off interviews for life. And I understand that because in England, for example, where I'm from, there's such a thing as the tabloid press, and they are not necessarily always very friendly, and they're always looking for a little edge. So if you're at a national or international event, I should say like Pan Am Games, Olympics particularly, because that is a big deal, then you just want to be aware, you just want to be aware because walls have ears, people listen. If you're there, you basically be on your best behavior and just no flying remarks here or there because they will pick up on that and they will use it. Same with photographs. We've all seen that, how that can go horribly wrong, videos horribly wrong. If you're in public, you're fair game. That's the first thing to remember. So, so find out who you're talking to, and then journalist etiquette dictates that they should tell you that they are a journalist. Okay. Now, I'm not saying everybody does, but then I'm not trying to paint a bad light on journalism here in general. But this is kind of like the being the devil's advocate here. They should tell you, and as soon as they tell you that they are a journalist, then whatever you say to them, whether it's on camera, off camera, in the tape, off the tape, is really, you've basically given them the right to use that. Now you can say, I want this to be off the record. I would never do that unless you have 100% trust in the journalist you're talking to. You're fine with me. I'm serious, but you don't go back and say, "Oh, that was off the record." Too late. It's gone. So be mindful of what you say because and they've seen it. We've all seen it. Politicians on camera, they think the camera's off, they think the mic's off, and then they've said something really inappropriate, and it's gone all over the internet. Well, I'm sorry, but you had a mic on, you're at a press event. What do you think's going to happen? So just don't be naive, I guess is the point. So there's another sort of gray area with preempting interviews. There's two things you can do. If it's a pre-planned interview and it's a big thing for a magazine and there's a deadline that's like 2 months out and everybody's taking their time and they approach you and say, okay, you have this brilliant horse you're looking after. We would love to do a full profile on you and all your background and everything else. At that point, you would be justified in asking, could you send me over a few questions um, to just, and I'll tell you why. They will send the questions most of the time, almost always. It doesn't mean that's all they're going to ask you. So, because once you start interviewing someone, if you're good at it, you won't just ask a question and wait for the answer. You will feed off whatever answer they've given you and probably go off on several different tangents. However, the good thing is if you get the questions in advance, it will give you a very good idea of what angle they're going to take. So, whether it's going to be a veterinary article or whether it's going to be about the horse. So it's not a bad idea to ask for the questions. I don't really like it when people really just insist on writing the answers back because, to be honest, it kills the interview. Like there's no color in it, it's robotic, it's not really necessary. But it does make sense to prepare yourself for what you're going to be asked. If it's a short interview, like say at the showgrounds, somebody like me might try and grab you, right? But because you've got the horse in your hand, it's perfectly fine to say, hey, I can't talk now, but and I'll give you my card and you can say, okay, I'll contact you tomorrow or whatever. And if I have a deadline, it's up to me to say, hey, can you get back to me today? Because I've got to get this in tomorrow. And then that's a fair thing to do to put it off. Like, don't be put on the spot. If you're not ready and you're not like wanting to talk at that moment, it's absolutely polite and fine to say, hey, can I just give you a call later this evening or whatever, and do it that way. Because some people, can be a bit pushy and it's okay to say, I can't talk right now, I've got a horse to look after. It's fine. So the horse comes first and you can always ask to reschedule it later. The next thing is kind of like when you're in school and you take an exam and they say, read the question, right? Read the question 3 times. Listen to the question, okay? Listen to the question when a journalist asks you a question. And before you answer it, give yourself a pause, not a long pause, but just don't rush into answering. Don't say the first thing that pops into your head. You're perfectly fine just going, and then speak, because that's giving you a minute to think about what you're going to say. And that's helpful if they've asked a particularly, I don't know, not a question that you're not too comfortable with. Like, for example, did that horse, I guess it was off for 2 years with injury, right? And then you might feel like you have to jump in and say, oh, yes, it had a, tendon and this and that and the other, which is information that in general you don't really want to share. So it's all right to step back and say, I'll have to check on that for you. Or, yeah, I'm not sure about that exactly, but I can get back to you. Just, deflect, but don't necessarily say, I can't say anything about that. Like, don't make it more dramatic than it is, but it's all very acceptable to deflect or defer to people in your team. If, say, they're asking about an injury to a horse, I would definitely say, I think that's a question for my bar manager or a question for the bar manager and the vet. Don't feel like you have to answer. But at the same time, don't panic and go no comment because then they think, oh, what else is she going to do? It's kind of like a red flag. So my big thing is if in doubt, leave it out. So if you're not sure about something, don't say it. How old is the horse? it might be 12, just say, I'm not sure, I can't tell you. Or is the horse, when was he gelded or something? I think he was gelded last year. No, just say, I'm sorry, I don't know that answer. I don't have that information. I can get it for you. It's not that it's bad. It's just that it creates some kind of inaccuracies, and then you're kind of stuck with the inaccuracy, which gets me on to um, the next point, which is reading and reviewing interviews. So if you have the luxury of being interviewed by Danette or myself, and I do a lot of stuff for Horse Grooms, when I worked as a journalist, it was very unprofessional, I would say, to let anyone review your work before you published it. And also, if you're working for a daily paper, you're on extremely tight deadlines. There's no time for you to email someone the article and say, can you look at it and get back to me? Because to be honest, a lot of times people don't get back, and then you've got to chase them up, and then you're stuck with your editor going, well, where's the story? And you're like, well, I'm waiting for it to get approved. No, that doesn't happen. However, there are some friendly publications around here, Horse Grooms being one, and Paper Horse certainly my publication the other. I almost always send the article to the person, unless it's something that it's an interview after the Grand Prix and it's just basically a lot of quotes that the rider said. I will always email the groom I'm writing about, and I've done a lot of grooms interviews with Danette. And two things, it works for me and it works for you. It works for me because if you know that you're going to be able to review everything you've said, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable talking to me. So I'm going to get a lot more color and a lot more of what I need from you. And then for you, it's great because you can go and look at it and go, don't know, mean that. And there's been some interesting examples of why that's good. We have had, most of the time, I have to say, it doesn't come back with any comments. Most people go, oh my God, I love it. Or maybe I've spelt the horse's name wrong, or the rider's name, or the groom's name, or something, minor things like that. But we did have one girl who had a horse that had come over from France, and it had been out in the paddock quite a lot. And I can't remember who it was, and I'm not going to name her. But anyway, she said, "Oh yeah, it was great when the horse got to America. We called it Roly Poly." And I thought, well, that's really cute. I'm going to put that. So oh, Roly Poly. So then she gets the article, reads it back, and she's like, I didn't mean to make it sound like they overfed it and it's fat, which is a complete understandable thing because the owners in France could go, oh, mon Dieu, because, oh, so we took it out. But that's the kind of thing you have to think about when you're talking, because I thought it was cute. I put it in. She looked at it, read it to herself, and went, oh God, I'm in trouble for that. So that's the kind of thing you have to think when you're making. But having said that, your horses are your key. Right, the personality of the horse. Most grooms, most riders even open up when they start talking about their horses. So feel free to, wax lyrical about the horse. Steer clear of obviously lameness and, yeah, it likes to bite me in the stall because it's probably going to get sold next month, and then they're not going to buy it because but just keep it general. But I love it when grooms talk about their horses because it shows their passion, and it gives you a big insight into the horse's personality. And every horse, as we know, is different. And there's really, really, really good stories about horses. Like you were talking about the horse that you have that goes everywhere with a mini. I mean, how cute is that? Like a journalist would be like, that would be fabulous. And it's harmless, right? Pretty much. So, so where were we? Yep, got that. If there's an error in an interview you have given, like you read it online or something comes back that you were interviewed and it's inaccurate, if it's online and it's digital, it's definitely worth contacting the person who's done it and say, could you just change that, please? Even if it's small, because nowadays you can change it in 2 seconds on WordPress or whatever app you're using, and that it's worth it. And they'll want to know, to be fair. Like they will want to know if they've got something wrong, okay? Because nobody wants bad information or, fake news out there. But if it's more if it's in print, that's a whole different story because it's in print and it's done and dusted. And I would recommend not, unless if it's a fairly minor thing, like a spelling's wrong or an age or something like that, it's really not having any knock-on effect on anyone's business or livelihood, I would leave it. Because if you go back and draw attention to it or post on social media about it, like, look what so and so wrote, this is wrong, all you're really doing is putting a spotlight back on the thing that you don't want people to read. So I would recommend don't go there, don't go there. Don't ask for attraction, don't bring it up, don't post about it. Just, people move on and stuff goes away. However, if it's a legal thing, like it's causing legal problems, or I mean, obviously this is not necessarily in your job description, but for the owners or whoever else, then it's perfectly fine to go back to the print publication and say, listen, that is incorrect, and you probably get your lawyers onto it. They have to print a retraction, but on general speaking, I would never draw more attention to something that you just wanted to go away. It's best to let it go. So if you know you're going to be at a high profile event or have a high profile horse, it's just worth prepping. If you have a really good horse, whether it's in the jumper ring or the hunter ring, or that at some point it's going to come into the spotlight, I think grooms are going to be more and more at the forefront of the interviewing and the sort of whole picture of the horse world. Because of Danette and other organizations, it's becoming, I think, a trend and it's gathering momentum. So if I were a groom, I'd want to speak for my craft and I'd want to speak to journalists and I'd want to put my best foot forward for horsemanship and being an ambassador for the equestrian sport. I think it's all super positive. I know I've said some things that are slightly scary, but if you prep and it's a lot of it's common sense. You shouldn't have to worry. So if I have a really special horse, say for example the hunter that won the Derby Hunt and Go on Friday, I interviewed the groom, and he said just some really lovely things about the horse. Like he feels at one, he talks to it like it's his child. The horse is very excitable, but he spent a lot of time calming it down by talking to it, and it hates other horses. All right, and I think that was fine because this horse is, so expensive that no one's probably going to be able to afford it anyway. And he just said it loves people but won't go near other horses at all. And that was cute, So when he goes to the ring, he has to be careful there's plenty of space around it. But he obviously knows his horse well. And when I interviewed him, that really came across, and it warms your heart. It does. And I think people, when they read those stories about the grooms and the connections that they have, I think it does wonders for the sport, wonders. So think about that and think about if you were to be interviewed, what would you say? What wouldn't you say? Just what would you put across basically? And I don't know if any of you have talked to your employers about this or if it's even relevant at this point, but I think if I had a job in grooming, especially in a high profile barn, I might just have the conversation with the employer and say, what's your policy on, journalists interviews? If I get approached, am I allowed to talk about it? Do I need to go by you first? And that would be a good conversation to have for everyone, because then you're not caught off guard and put in a spot where you don't need to be. And I think most owners, depending on the publication again, but most owners definitely and trainers want their grooms to get the recognition. I mean, they are massively in favor of it, in my opinion and my experience. Like, oh gosh, yes, please do talk to them because they've been with us for years and they're fabulous. But I think it's all really positive, and it's also positive in the connection that you have with your team in the barn. Which brings me on to the other thing you can do, which is really good. So if you get interviewed, make sure you mention your employers and your team. Like, take it. This guy was good, by the way. I forget his name. He's like, oh, by the way, I want to say thank you to so and so, and they're my favorite employers. And da 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 da. And I was like, that's so smart. You're so smart. But it's a good chance to say, and if you don't want to mention names, that is absolutely fine too. But just say it's not just me; it's a team, and our team is fantastic, and I appreciate all the help I have from my team. That's a great line to have for anyone in any interview. Like, make it a team effort and refer to your team and refer to the name of the barn, because sometimes people forget to say the name of the barn, and then you know, as a journalist, you're either rushing to look it up or you leave it out. No, I don't leave it out, but you know what I mean. So, so this is really where I get down to the summary of this. Again, I think I've already said it probably 10 times, but grooms are important ambassadors for the sport. Nobody's on the front line more than the grooms. I mean, riders get interviewed a lot all the time, and I'll tell you, it is quite funny interviewing riders because the Irish, not a problem. Like they will say they're funny, they make jokes, like but they're Irish, everyone's okay with that, right? But then you interview more sort of serious figures, and I won't name names again, and you can tell they're holding back, and they're going to be incredibly professional about it, and they're probably not going to give you your headline by slipping something in about the quirk of their horse. But so everybody has their different personalities, but it's a little like use your personality. Don't be afraid to use your personality. And if you have a little joke to make, it's fine. Just open up a little bit. Like don't be too robotic when you're answering questions because frankly, it's there's color to be had, and color is good. Color is good. So at the end of the day, interviews should be a positive experience. And I think if you do your homework, most importantly, know who you're talking to, and make sure And if you have a chance to look through publications that are at the horse show, obviously we all know the Chronicle. There are lots out there. You can always look at them and say, oh yeah, okay, they're legit. They're obviously real horse people writing about horse things. And then if in doubt, don't. And get advice from your employer if you need it, or your trainer, or whoever's you're higher up, and just say, listen, I've been asked to do this. Are you okay with it? Would you mind if I did it? And most of the time, I think they'll say that's absolutely no problem. That's it. So any questions at all? Like anything. Like I know that's quite a lot of information to digest, but are you all on social media? Okay, that's a whole nother ball game, isn't it? But are you careful what you put on social media about your work? Does anybody have a professional social media account? No, all private. I mean, all personal. You do, yeah. How do you present your brand on there? Like,
I try to be clean looking, clean messaging. I I I try to have a appeal. I don't know if I'm successful at it, but I mean, I want it to feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the thing with grooms too, is that they are representing people other than themselves. Even when you're doing your private, personal Instagram, you're representing everybody in your life in terms of the equestrian world. Not everyone in your life, you're representing everyone in your barn, and it's important to remember that, and not to lose sight of that. But it's fun, and it should be fun. And you were interviewed as well, you said, for who was it?
Yeah, and I always ask to see the proof. I always ask to proof what's going out, because some of the stuff that I share is very technical. And for instance, braiding, people hear things that I didn't say because they don't understand what I'm trying to say. So in all fairness, it doesn't always come out it does, something gets lost in translation. So and also I'm nervous generally, I think. So I asked to see it, and most of the time they let me see it. I can't think of a time that maybe they didn't want to let me see it, but they have always let me read it before it goes out. And I promise them I won't make any judgment calls. I just want to read for accuracy.
That's the thing. The danger with a journalist giving it out is that somebody's going to come back and have rewritten the whole thing for you, which is not what you want. But yeah, if it's the odd inaccuracy, then absolutely 100%. But the other thing is the deadlines, because once you've given it to a third party, you're now stuck. You cannot publish it because you've told this person. You can see it before it goes out, and then you're left in the unenviable position of trying to get hold of them, especially with grooms, because the schedules are so tight and they haven't had time to call you back, and then it gets a little panicky if you're on a deadline. So I do understand why people don't do it, but you know, even if they call you maybe and just want to fact check a few things with you, something like that. But you can't guarantee that that's going to happen. So be wary of that. You can ask beforehand, and if they say no, you can say, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm just not comfortable doing the interview." It's fine.
You also said that you don't do press releases. What did you mean by
Oh, I
that?
meant I don't. My paper horse. I don't rewrite press releases. I don't use press releases. I might use them for the odd fact here and there, but I write all my stuff from scratch. Um, it's not. I'm not trying to be like above everyone else doing that, but I have the time to do it, and that's my MO, and it's what I wanted to do, and so I just because it's just a bit it's a bit it's not as it's not as fulfilling as writing your own stuff, to be honest. And one of my things, my funnest things, is talking to people and finding out the story within the story, because you'd be surprised. Lots of people have different stories, and that's what I'm trying to get to. So press releases are great. They serve a purpose. They definitely do. And I would never discourage people from sending them out, because if you are a journalist and you're writing your story, you can quickly look for the facts. Like, it's on March the 17th and it's at blah, blah, blah. Then you've got that there. They work. But I think just reprinting them, it's not what I want to do.
It's not original either. What
Not
you do is
original.
original.
Everything I do is original.
Difficult word for an
It's
immigrant.
original. It's all original. Yeah, and yeah, I think that's important. I think in this day and age, there's so much stuff that's not original, and we don't even know what's real and what isn't anymore. I'm trying very hard to stick with real, and that's what I'm doing. So I don't know. Do you have questions?
Yeah, I
I
do.
thought you might.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how we can steer an interview?
Yeah. So well, you know, politicians are masters at it. As we all know, like, they can basically not answer the question at all, just start talking about something else. That's one way you can do it. So, for example, if they said to you, you know, was the horse injured last week? You say, like, I don't know, how could you deflect that? You could just say, he's on best form, and we are very excited that he's performing
Yeah.
as well as he is, or something like that. Like, not answer it, but just don't pick up on it. And then the biggest thing is the silence, because journalists will do this. They'll ask you a question and then they'll just go quiet, because people fall into silences. It's an awkward thing to have a silence. And if you're sitting on the other end of the phone, or usually, because I do a lot of interviews on the phone, and I go quiet, you're going to feel like most people have the need to fill the silence with something. Don't be careful with that. If you start blurting something out just because it's quiet, just let them finish, like that. Let them talk. Let them talk.
But you know, you're a good interviewer. You're a good journalist. There are also a lot of people who write or whatever. They
Yeah,
write whatever, and they only ask like, "How was the jump off? What was your idea? What was your tactic?" Or how to, they don't have original questions.
no,
And then if you want to tell your story, then you can just tell it. Even if they only ask, "Okay, how long have you been working for that person? What is your daily schedule with the horses?" Okay, thank you. You can tell something about the horse, or about your work, or about your career that you're really proud of. Just give them some
yeah,
color.
absolutely. I'm 100% right
Yeah.
there. I mean, yeah, you say, oh, you may not know this. You may not know this, but I started working for, Peter when I was 12 years old. Not happened, but anyway, give them a bit of interest, and then they might follow it up and ask you more questions about that. So yeah, definitely do that. That's good. And especially if you want to talk about your horse, I think, always say, oh, I'd like to mention my team, and also how proud I am to be working with this horse, who is, an absolute gem to look after, and I'm just so blessed to be in this position. That kind of thing, especially, does a lot for you as a professional, career, in your career, because people are going to read that and they're going to go, oh my god, this person knows how to to handle themselves in public, and that's a huge thing.
Also, horseman, horse welfare now. If you
Oh.
you know you guys are good at the barn and good with what you do with the horses, and you take them out 4 times a day and they get hay the whole day and stuff like that, tell them, because people love that.
Mm-hmm.
And when people ask me like why I started Horse Grooms or whatever, it's true. Like, it's for horsemanship and horse welfare and groom welfare, basically. And then when I elaborate a little bit on that, then they say, oh, that's so beautiful. And I didn't realize that. I thought, okay, yeah, that's just what we do. But people love that story.
Yeah.
So they love stories. If you can tell a story, then that's really great for an interview.
It is good. It is good because again, it's nice to. It's a fine line between sharing too much information and not sharing enough.
Yeah.
But certainly, if you've got color stories in your background, like I grew up, I grew up in, I don't know, racing donkeys. Why did I say that? I grew up doing something, but then I fell into show jumping by accident because my friend was working. So those kinds of stories are great for journalists because it really gives the interview a lift, and they're harmless. Most of the time that's a harmless thing to talk about, your background, how you got into how you became a groom, why you became a groom, what you like about being a groom. All of those things are really good topics to touch on.
And you can prepare that.
And you can
Yeah.
prepare that, yes, 100%. Because I think, again, there's no cookie cutter grooming story. Like, everybody has a different grooming story. There's quite a lot that start with, well, I had a gap year. And then, and then I'm 10 years later, I'm still doing. There's a lot of those, but it's very interesting to share your journey, as it were. Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
How do you avoid filler words like and then like being stiff and like?
Again, I think it's
Just-
practice.
yeah.
So is a very common thing to do. The other thing you need to try to avoid is like, and I know. That's really stuttering on a video. But I think again, it's practice in front of the mirror. Just go in front of the mirror and talk to yourself about your life. So I was born in England. I grew up with my parents. My mother was a racehorse trainer. My brothers did this. Practice talking without going You get better at it with practice for sure. I don't think there's any easy way to stop doing it. And a lot of it is nerves, because we all get quite nervous, and you're breaking it up with I like when I've interviewed someone and I've got and I'm deleting, or I think, because I think is kind of redundant. I think the horse is good. The horse is good. So try to cut out those fillers, as you put it, but it takes practice, really. I think it's training is most of it. And we all use it everyday life. It's quite difficult to avoid. Practice.
More questions?
Oh, okay. Well, thanks, guys,
Well,
for coming.
Thank you very much. I
Yeah.
think it was great.
That was
Yeah.
and by the way, I'm going to give myself a little plug here. If anyone has any good stories, that they, seriously, though, about a horse that has a special quirk to it or anything, I'm always looking for stories that are sort of a little bit off the beaten track. So if you ever hear of anything like that, please do get in touch. I know, the grooms are the best. Like I say, the grooms know everything. I don't know, you guys go to Taco Tuesdays, some of you? No?
You can go now.
Oh, but
maybe.
they can, it's,
Yeah.
it's on the same day. That's the
Yeah.
other thing, isn't it? But yeah, I get the best stories from the grooms. They really are. They're the gems of the horse world as far as knowledge and horsemanship and just good anecdotes, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so
No, you're
much,
welcome.
Sarah.
Yeah.
We're gonna do this online also one time. I think.
Yeah,
I
we
think it's
might
great.
do. Yeah.
I hope it's helped you guys a little bit, and prepare. Thank you so much for coming, and maybe see you next time.
Okay, and check out Paper Horse and share it with your friends, because I've been doing it for 2 years, and I just need more people to see it. Thank you.
Yeah, and you should also have told them, but I will do that now,
Okay.
that you can do something like this for a barn
I
team,
could.
huh?
I could.
Because there's more and more spotlights on the horse business, on grooms, on equestrian in in general.
Yeah,
And it's good if you're prepared a little bit, if you know a little bit how to handle that.
absolutely. I think it's something else to have in your wheelhouse, so to speak, and to have thought about, because it is quite a big deal. And as we all know, once information gets out there, it's pretty hard to get it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
thanks for coming, guys. Thank you. Thank you.